Hello everyone. Today, I'm sharing my journey of how I trained my brain to think and speak in English fluently. If you're struggling with fluency, I want you to know that you are not alone. Many people, including me, have faced this challenge. But the good news is, there are ways to improve. Let me tell you my story, not as a perfect guide, but as someone who once stood where you might be standing now, trembling at the thought of opening her mouth to speak. My name is Sofia Martinez. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Chicago, a city that hums with languages. Spanish in the Ticarius of Pilsen, Polish in the bakeries of Avondale, and English in the skyscrapers downtown. But for years, English felt like a locked door to me. You see, I grew up in a home where Spanish was the language of love. My parents moved here from Colombia before I was born, and our apartment was always filled with the rhythm of vallenato music, the warmth of arepas on the stove, and my abuela's stories about the mountains of Medellin. I understood English perfectly. I aced exams, read biology textbooks, and binge-watched Friends. But when it came to speaking, my mind would freeze. Words tangled like earphones in a pocket. I'd translate every thought from Spanish first, stumbling over tenses, terrified of sounding broken. The worst moment came during my sophomore year. I'd spent weeks preparing a presentation on rainforest ecosystems. But when I stood in front of the class, my throat closed. Las plantas, the plants in the Amazon, I mumbled. A classmate snorted. My professor sighed. Sophia, slow down. We can't understand you. I wanted to vanish. That night, I cried into my pillow, wondering if I'd ever belong in the world of labs and lectures. But here's the truth, my friend. Shame can either bury you or become fuel. I chose fuel. It started small. Every morning, while making tinto, Colombian coffee strong enough to wake the dead, I'd narrate my actions out loud. I'm pouring water into the kettle. The coffee smells like Abuelita's kitchen. Today, I'll study Chapter 7. At first it felt silly. Who talks to an empty kitchen? But slowly, my brain began thinking in English. No more translating. I labeled everything in my apartment. Ventana became window, espejo turned into mirror. I even named my stubborn houseplant, Mr. Photosynthesis, to practice tricky words. One day, I caught myself dreaming in English. I was arguing with David Attenborough about ferns. That's when I knew. My brain was rewiring itself. Progress wasn't pretty. At a community garden volunteer event, I told an elderly gardener, "Your tomatoes are very nervous," instead of nutritious. He laughed so hard he dropped his trowel. But instead of hiding, I leaned in. Okay, teach me the right word. I begged. His name was Jake, a retired teacher with a passion for compost. He became my unofficial tutor, correcting my grammar as we planted kale. Then there was Priya, my roommate from India, who mixed Hindi and English like a spicy masala chai. We'd stay up late, sharing language horror stories. Once I told my boss, "I'm under the blanket," instead of "under the weather." She giggled. Her laughter taught me, mistakes are just stories waiting to be told. I turned my guilty pleasures into lessons. I'd watch Jane the Virgin with subtitles, repeating Gina Rodriguez's witty comebacks. Karaoke nights became pronunciation boot camps, belting out Shakira's "Whenever, Wherever" taught me to roll my R's and say, hips don't lie without blushing. But the real game changer? Podcasts. I'd listen to Science Versus while jogging by Lake Michigan, mimicking the host's accent. Water versus water, I'd mutter, earning strange looks from pigeons. The biggest test came in Miami. My aunt, a nurse, dragged me to a free health clinic. Patients spoke English tangled with Cuban slang and Haitian Creole. One man, Mr. Baptiste, wheezed, "Doc, my heart's doing the tum-tum dance." My hands shook as I translated his symptoms. But by the end of the week, I was cracking jokes with kids in the waiting room. "Your bandage is fancy," I told a girl with a sparkly cast. She grinned, "You talk funny, but I like you." That's when it hit me. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about connection. Today, I volunteer at a youth center in Little Village. My favorite student, Luis, once whispered, "I freeze during presentations." I handed him my old journal, pages stained with coffee and crossed out mistakes. "See this?" I said. I wrote, "ecosystema," 20 times before spelling it right. Every error is a step forward. Last month, Luis gave a speech on climate change. When he finished, the room erupted in cheers. He looked at me, eyes shining, and mouthed, "Gracias. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Your voice matters, accent and all. Start small. Talk to your pet, your mirror, or a potted plant. Find your Jake or Priya. People who cheer for your stumbles. Sing in the shower. Watch bad TV. Collect mistakes like seashells. Each one is proof you're trying. One day, you'll wake up and realize your thoughts are dancing in English. And when that day comes, promise me you'll turn to someone struggling and say, 'Hello, my dear friend. Let me tell you a story.' With love and messy courage. Sophia Seedling. Let me take you deeper, friend. After that first presentation disaster, I started carrying a tiny notebook everywhere. I'd jot down phrases I overheard, like how my barista said, "Crazy busy today, huh?" instead of, "It's very busy." Those casual snippets became my secret weapon. I'd practice them while waiting for the bus, muttering, "Crazy cold out here," to no one in particular. Old ladies side-eyed me, but I didn't care. Then there was the time I tried to flirt. Dios mío, what a mess. At a cafe, a cute guy in a flannel shirt smiled at me. My brain short-circuited. "Your, camisa is nice," I blurted. He blinked. My what? I wanted to melt into the floor. But guess what? He's now my boyfriend, Carlos. Turns out, he was learning Spanish too. Our first dates were us teaching each other slang. He'd say, "That's lit," and I'd counter with, "Esta chimba." We still laugh about it. I also discovered the magic of thinking walks. Every evening, I'd stroll through Humboldt Park, describing the world in English. The sunset looks like a mango sorbet. Those kids are chasing pigeons like tiny tornadoes. At first, it felt like reciting poetry to the wind. But soon, those walks became my meditation. The words flowed faster, richer. I even started writing little poems in English, tucking them into library books for strangers to find. Oh, and let's talk about the power of embarrassment. Once in a grocery store, I asked a clerk, Where are the chicken fingers? He pointed to the frozen aisle. But my brain, ever the traitor, whispered, "Dos de pollo." I burst out laughing. The clerk stared. I had to explain through giggles. In Spanish, it's chicken fingers too, but literally. He laughed so hard he high-fived me. Now, we're buddies. He teaches me Chicago slang. I teach him Colombian curses. Graduation day was my proudest moment. As I stood in my cap and gown, my parents waved a Colombian flag in the crowd. When my name was called, I didn't trip, didn't stutter. I strode across the stage and said loud and clear, "Thank you." No one knew how much that word cost me. But I did. And that's what matters. So here's my heart, friend. Your journey will be messy, hilarious, and utterly yours. You'll accidentally call your boss Mom, mispronounce squirrel 5 ways, and maybe flirt poorly in 2 languages. But each stumble is a seed. Water it with courage, and one day you'll bloom. Always remember, I'm rooting for you. Sophia Cherry Blossom. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Your support means a lot and helps us keep creating.